Hello guys, my name is Paul Watson and welcome to a brand new series on my channel, my first ever series at that, which centres around my weekly race highlights within the Actrollvision Project Cars 2 Touring Car Championship on PlayStation 4. Understandably, before this race I was incredibly nervous, as prior to this I'd only ever competed in Formula 1 racing leagues, but decided to make the switch over to Project Cars, and Actrollvision in particular, due to how competitive, exciting and well run the league appeared to be, as you'll see throughout this video. I'll be competing in a Renault Megane with the number 61 Positon automotive livery. So when testing the options prior to making my car selection for the season, I felt that within the touring car category, the Renault Megane itself was the car that was most consistent in all aspects, as it had good pace whilst remaining true and nimble through the corners, which at times I struggled with personally in the BMW. However, the BMW was still selected by some of the top guys in this league, so obviously they found a way to drive it more successfully than myself. So you join us now going into our hot lap for the session, which is our fastest qualifying time. As you can see, I left it a little bit late as I posed a fairly solid time earlier, which is enough to get me into P9, but traffic on the lap made me think that maybe if I go out right at the end, after the track's adapted, I might be able to go out for one final push and get the last few tenths of a second, which could gain me a place. So throughout the day, I realised that tyre wear was going to be a massive issue in this race, especially with the front left, as that appeared to overheat a lot faster than the other tyres, which is a current theme throughout the race itself, because as you can see already, when you look on the front left tyre, it's already a lot greener than the rest, and yet I've only done a single outlap, so quite often you'd lose a lot of your grip, which led to understeer later in the race. So I knew that in order for me to stand the best chance of getting the result I wanted, I really needed to capitalise on this qualifying session to really try and push myself up the pecking order. So now I'm dropping down into second gear for this corner. I found that I was getting a lot more drive out of here than some of the other people of my standard. As you'll see from the qualifying times, there's kind of three groups of drivers which consist of, the top competitors, and then a middle kind of group which I'm towards the back of, and then a group of slightly slower drivers but were more consistent in the races. So at this point I was a couple of tenths up on my lap, but unfortunately made one or two mistakes going through the stadium section, which became a recurring theme in the race itself. But as we're running the final corner now, I was the last driver to cross the line, I believe, and with that I was able to push myself up one place into P8, so not ideal, but overall not too bad of a start. As you can see here's the standings, which highlights exactly what I was on about in terms of the splits between the drivers. So skip forward to the start of the race. I got an okay start compared to the rest of the grid. I'm not the best at race starts at the moment, and as you can see there was kind of a split pack between the good race starters and the bad race starters, and I somehow managed to fall into the middle of it. But as always, first lap, cars bumper to bumper with one another, one or two pieces of contact here and there. I managed to keep my nose pretty clean. As we headed through the turn 2, 3, 4 section around the parabolica now, and as you can see, because these are a spec setup race class, a lot of the racing is done a couple inches away from one another, and usually that brings some issues. So as you can see here, heading into the braking zone, out of nowhere a flying car appears. As the red and blue Megane collides with the BMW, sending the poor Momo liveried Megane flying through the air, and I managed to make up a nice position out of it. So I'm not complaining, as now we are heading through turn 7. I've gained 2 positions by this point up into P6, which I was quite pleased with, because considering I was quite nervous at the start as it was my first race. We're now heading into the turn 10 section, about to turn into turn 11, which is Mobile. And the problem with this is I was struggling a lot in terms of to find the extra edge on drivers, because usually I like to gained that through like setup work, so helping my car suit myself more. However, as I mentioned earlier, with it being a spec setup, we had to stick to the basic options of a stable or a loose setup as already designed by Project Cars itself. And so as a result, you lose that kind of individuality of being able to tailor a car to your needs, which brings in a whole host of problems, like I mentioned earlier, with tyre wear. As, for example, throughout this race, you can notice I'm gradually gaining more and more understeer, as the front left in particular really struggled to grip on, as it was getting overheated due to the camber that was a preset, as well as the stiffness of the chassis. And so as a result, it's pretty difficult to handle. But here is an example of why this class is good with the stable setups, because we're 3 wide now going into the hairpin here, and you wouldn't get that if you allowed the drivers to design their own setups, which I think is a massive credit to Actrollvision for deciding to do this, because look how close we are racing around here now. It just makes for so much more exciting racing. As I dive down the inside here, a little bit of a dive bomb, but I'll take it. I position myself well, move up to position 5, 3 places gained from my first ever race in this league, so I was really happy at this point. Going into it, I wasn't too sure how well I was going to do in terms of whether or not I was kind of in the same ballpark of their ability level, but gaining those 3 positions off the bat, granted one was through a bit of a shunting incident with the flying Momo livery car, which somehow managed to still stick to the back of this pack, so fair play to that driver. But I started to grow more and more confident as the time went on. But as with everything in life, confidence grows and leads to mistakes. As here, I ran a bit too wide, lost a little bit of time coming out there, and unfortunately picked up my first slowdown warning, which many of you guys may or may not know. A slowdown warning in a race in Project Cars 2 basically means stop on the track or gain a 1-second penalty. And obviously you lose far more by slowing down and stopping on the track compared to getting the 1-second penalty. So I decided I'll just take it, I'm not going to risk wasting any more time, and just see what happens from there on out. And I decided to keep pushing, and the following lap I bottled it again. So turn 1, the Valtteri Bottas corner from this year's GP, really started to take its toll on me, and as a result I lost a place. So we joined us a couple laps later now. It's starting to turn into dusk, which is one thing that I absolutely love about this game, is the changing of the time and how really well they've managed the graphics of this, because you don't really appreciate it when you're driving, but re-watching back the video, it's a stunning game they put together. So the car of, I think his name's Ash, which is the car that's closing in behind me now, he was really on my tail, and part of that was because I was a little bit wary of picking up too many more penalties, because I wasn't too familiar with the kind of penalty system in this league, and whether or not getting too many off-track penalties would have further ramifications for my overall participation in the league. So I'd already picked up 3 seconds worth of penalties, which I found out at the end wasn't actually too bad, as quite a lot of other drivers picked 2 or 3 seconds up, so I believe this is quite just a difficult track to deal with. But still, despite me sitting off a little bit, I was still able to stay on the back, probably through the use of slipstream here of these 2 cars, which have been fighting for laps on end at this point. It's truly fantastic driving from those drivers. But as with all good things, they have to come to an end. And as you can see here, Ash really closing in on me, getting a good braking point down into here, and I run wide again. And a little bit of my own doing this race, where I did so well gaining those 3 places, but then ultimately bottled it, gave 2 back, and ended up in P7, which I can't be too annoyed with, because talking before the race, I was saying to a couple of guys in the league, I needed to judge in this first race really where my level is, I didn't want to know whether or not I was like a Minardi level, like a Williams from last season, or whether or not I could actually compete with these guys. And to know that I was more of a mid-table driver is more than okay with me, because it gives me a great platform to really push on throughout the rest of the season. So as we're turning into nighttime now, the gap starts to grow between me and the other drivers. I was being a little bit more tentative in case of I didn't want to throw away all I'd earned with this P7, because it's a solid 4 points in the position I was sitting in, and I really had to decide whether or not pushing and risking getting another penalty and not knowing the status of the guy behind me, whether or not he was closing in on me or whether or not he had penalties. I didn't want to risk it too much. So I took my foot off the gas a little bit, I started lapping about a second a bit slower, and as a result I seemed to end up in a bit of a no man's land. As you watch me now coming around in the final few bits of the last lap, we're well into the darkness now, and as you can see, final position, I came 7th, I gained 1 position off the starting line, so you know, all in all it wasn't too bad a performance from me. I'm quite glad that I was able to put in that kind of performance, gain some solid points in my first race, and ultimately give myself a great platform to build off of. But anyway guys, thank you very much for watching. That's all for this week's update. Next week we have Donington GP. I'm really looking forward to that track, as it's one of my favourites on the calendar. Please let me know down in the comments below what other kind of things you want to see in these commentaries, in terms of, do you want to see more telemetry, see if I can do that kind of thing, or just talk about different aspects of the race, or see different camera angles. Let me know in the comments below. What would you change if you had the opportunity to? Because at the end of the day, I want to make enjoyable content from you from here on out. So thank you very much for watching guys. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and share with people, because obviously I'm just starting out. Any help on that would be fantastic. Thank you all, and have a great weekend.